तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठम् अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्रीपरमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ We will chant the Mangala Shloka of Tattva Bodha first, then we will enter the class. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukṣūnām hitāर्थāya Tattva Bodho bhidhīyate. Shadaji, you can chant.
वासुदेवेन्द्र योगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते.
I welcome you all to the 36th class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. We entered the text Tattva Bodha in the last class, and we looked at the meaning of the Mangala Shloka, where the author is stating that the text called Tattva Bodha is being presented for the sake of the Mumukṣus, for the benefit of the Mumukṣus. Bodha means knowledge. Therefore, this means knowledge of the Tattva. And we looked into the meaning of what Tattva is in the last class. We took the example of a shirt. We say initially that the shirt exists. But then when we inquire into it, we find that it is the fabric that exists. And the shirt appears to exist. If we inquire into it further, the fabric is made up of yarn. So we say that the yarn really exists. The shirt and the fabric, just appearances. And then looking into it further, we say it's the fibers that really exist, because the yarn is also made up of fibers. So it's the fibers that really exist, the cotton fibers. the shirt, the fabric, the yarn, they are all appearances. They appear to exist. Finally, we say that it is the cotton that really exists. Because the fiber is nothing but cotton. It's the cotton that really exists, the shirt, the yarn, the shirt, the fabric, the yarn, and the fiber. They are all just appearances of cotton. It is cotton all the way. It's nothing but cotton. So in the limited example, we could say that cotton is the tattva of the shirt. What really exists? The cotton is the tattva of the fabric. The cotton is the tattva of the yarn and the fiber. Really speaking, we could take this example further because it is not the final tattva yet. So we look at the world. Similarly, Vedanta says that there is one tattva that pervades this entire world. There is one tattva that really exists in this world. Everything else is just an appearance. And Vedanta also points out that the same tattva is really the tattva of the jiva as well, and of Ishvara as well. So there is one tattva underlying jiva, jagat, and Ishvara. So this is the tattva that this text is talking about. And the knowledge of this tattva leads to moksha. This is the thesis of Vedanta. This tattva is synonymous with Atma or Brahman. So tattva, Atma, Brahman, they are equivalent terms. Therefore, this text can also be called Brahma Bodha, the knowledge of the reality, or Atma Bodha, just self-knowledge. After this Mangala Shloka, the author gave a short preface for what the purpose of the text is, etc. Who the candidate is, Adhikari, Prayojanam, Vishayaha, and Sambandhaha. This is called Anubandha Chatushtayam that we have seen before. So, Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampannadhikarinam Mokṣa Sadhana Bhutam Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshyamaha. Who is the Adhikari? Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampannadhikarinam. Those who have these fourfold qualifications, Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampattiḥ, they are called Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna. Those adhikaris who are Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna, for those adhikaris. Moksha Sadhana Bhutam Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshyamaha. What is the benefit that the adhikaris will get through this study? So he says that the subject matter is moksha sadhana bhutam. It's a means to moksha. Therefore, it's clear that the benefit should be moksha. The prayojanam is moksha. What is moksha? This freedom from the endless struggle called samsara, freedom from this perpetual sense of apurnatva. That is moksha. And what is the subject matter of this? Tattva Viveka Prakaram. The subject matter is this discriminative, the method of discriminative inquiry into this tattva. The method of arriving at the discriminative knowledge of tattva. Why this discriminative knowledge? Why not just knowledge of Tattva? That is because it is not that I don't know the Tattva at all. I have the general knowledge, the Samanya Jnanam of this Tattva is there in the form of I am. But I have made a mistake because I don't know who or what this I am is. I have made a mistake about this I am. Therefore, a correction of this mistake, a correction of the mix-up is required. And that is why it needs to be a discriminative inquiry as opposed to just a normal inquiry. So if we look at it, we took the example of a red flower placed next to a crystal. A child says that the crystal is red. Why? Because the child has not understood the tattva of the crystal. It has not understood the real nature of the crystal, that the crystal is colorless by nature. And when I don't understand what something really is, I invariably make a mistake about it. And therefore, one has to be shown that, look, crystal, you are saying is red. That is your experience. But if you look at it, there are moments when you can see that the crystal is without the redness. If redness was the nature of the crystal, then it should always be red. And why do we see that the crystal is without the redness? We should inquire into it because therein lies the real nature of the crystal. Similarly, we see the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. In fact, humanity, a large part of humanity thought for a long time that the sun actually moves. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west, meaning that the sun is moving. And then what is the tattva? The tattva, the real nature of the situation, is that it is the earth that moves. The earth rotates around its axis. And if one doesn't understand what the reality is, then one makes a mistake. One attributes the movement that should really belong to the earth, one mistakenly attributes it to the sun. Therefore, one has to inquire into it and understand that it is the earth that really moves. The sun is stationary. So the movement of the sun is then reduced to an appearance, not the reality. Just like the shirt, the fabric, they are all reduced to appearances. They are not the reality. So similarly, I am saying that I am mortal. This world in front of me is real. And Ishvara is somewhere. He may or may not be there, but even if he is there, he is definitely somewhere remotely located. I have all these ideas about the Jivaha, Jagat, and Ishvara. Vedanta says that these are all mistakes. I have wrongly attributed immortality to myself. Immortality is there, all right, but it is not an attribute of the self. Reality is there, all right, but it is not an attribute of the world. This idea that Ishvara is somewhere remotely located, again, it's a wrong conclusion because I have not understood what this tattva is. I have not understood who I am. And therefore, a discriminative inquiry is required. That is why the subject matter is Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshamaha. Then what is the connection between the study of this subject matter and the prayojana? What is the sambandha? So he himself says that moksha sadhana bhutam tattva viveka prakaram. So this tattva viveka prakaram, the method of this discriminative inquiry into this tattva is the moksha sadhana. Is the moksha sadhana. Now we can say that we have studied so far that moksha, eka sadhana sadhyam, the sadhanam for moksha is jnanam only. So what is this word you're using now? Tattva Viveka Prakaram. We stick by the fact that the moksha is eka sadhana sadhyam only. The moksha is accomplished only through jnana. So in this case, this Tattva Viveka Prakaram is the discriminative inquiry that leads to this jnana. So the text, the Pramanam is there. The Pramanam gives me this discriminative inquiry, this Tattva Viveka Prakaram, and that Tattva Viveka Prakaram leads to this Jnanam, and the Jnanam leads to Moksha, because I recognize that Moksha is my own nature. It was never away from me. So this is the Anubandha Chatushtayam. So with this, we have covered the preface also. Now, if we look at the layout of the text, Tattva Bodha, then in the beginning there's a Mangala Shloka and the preface, the Anubandha Chatushtayam, that comes first. And following this, there's a discussion on the qualifications. This Sadhana Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ, what is that? So there's a discussion on that. So that is the first topic we can say in Tattva Bodha. Who is the Adhikari? What are the qualifications? What is Sadhana Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ? That's the first topic. Now, following this, the author gives the entire jnanam. He gives the jnanam that one has to arrive at, the final jnanam, in what can be called a sutra vakyam. In a single vakya, the author says, what is the final jnanam that I have to arrive at? And following that is the Tattva Viveka Prakaram. Tattva Viveka Prakara that the author talks about. So first the qualifications, then the Sutra Vakyam. And following that, there's an inquiry into Jivaha. Who is this Jiva? Jiva Vichara. That is the third topic. The fourth topic is Srishti Vichara. What is this reality of the Srishti? Or how did this Srishti come about really? Then the fifth, so we saw qualifications, first topic, Sutra Vakyam is the second topic, third is Jiva Vicharaha, fourth is Srishti Vicharaha, fifth is Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam or Mahavakya Vichara. The fifth topic. And the sixth topic is this Jnana Phalam. What is the benefit of this Jnana? So these are the 6 topics we will be covering in sequence. Now, if we look at the first topic, we will enter the first topic, which is qualifications. And this is something that we have seen in detail before in this Fundamentals of Vedanta series. And we had covered this extensively in classes 20, 21, 22, and 23. But we will go over it, and this time we will go over it as a quick revision of what we have seen so far. So the last time we did not chant these parts of the text. So this time we will also chant it. And the idea is that we all should be able to learn to chant the Tattva Bodha. And we should be able to do a Parayanam of the Tattva Bodha on a regular basis. And Swamiji gives so much importance to this text that Swamiji says that this text should really be in the memory of a serious student of Vedanta, because the text gives several important definitions that are used often in Vedanta, and once in a while, if we get a doubt about what this term exactly means, then we can quickly recall what Tattva Bodha says about it. So the regular Parayanam of this will subconsciously help in memorizing the text also. So we will enter the qualifications part and I will chant it, and after that you can also chant it. Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim. Shadaji, you want to chant after me? Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim.
Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim.
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha.
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha.
Ihamutrartha Phala Bhoga Viragaha.
Mutrartha Phala Bhoga Viragaha.
Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ.
Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ.
Mumukṣutvam cheti.
Mumukṣutvam cheti.
So since the author had used the word sadhana chatushtaya sampannadhikarinam moksha sadhana bhutam tattva viveka prakaram vakshamaha, since the author had used this sadhana chatushtaya sampanna term, so the Shishya is now asking the Guru. So the text is in the form of a conversation between the teacher and the student. So the student is now asking the question, Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim? What is this Sadhana Chatushtayam? The teacher is replying that it has these 4 parts to it, these 4 qualifications. Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha, Ihamutrartha Phalabhoga Viragaha, Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ, Mumukṣutvam cheti. So just a note about the pronunciation here. So when we say Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ, there can be a question about what is the difference in the 2 seemingly similar shakaras that we are seeing here. So this sh, the first one is sh, which is this talavya shakara, it's called sh, where when we say the sh, then the tongue hits this talu area that's called talu, sh. So it sh. So it hits this slightly upper part of the near the dental area, sh. So that is there. Where when we say sh, then there is a bending of the tongue backwards. That's the षट्कसम्पत्तिः. The tongue bends a bit backwards. And Ritu, Rashanam Murdha. So it's a Murdha sound. That is the upper part of the roof area. It hits the sh. That part it touches that. So just a note about this pronunciation. The same thing in Mumukṣutvam also, that same shakara is there. People call this difference the Shiva shakara, Shiva versus Shanmukha. So Shiva has got the sh sound. Shanmukha has got the sh sound. That's the difference. Now, Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. And this is Vivekaha, Vairagyam, षट्kasampattiḥ, and Mumukṣutvam. So now we have seen this part before. We will revise that as to why these qualifications are important. Mokṣa is eka sadhana sadhyam. The sadhanam is only jnanam. So by now, these are fundamentals of Vedanta that we should have no doubt about. There is no other way to moksha. Jnanam is the only means. Why? Because ajnanam is the cause. This jnanam is also eka sadhana sadhyam. That is also accomplished only by one means, and that sadhana, the means for accomplishing the jnanam, is the pramana. And that pramana is the Vaidika Shabda pramana, which is Vedanta. So all of this entire flow should now be crystal clear in our mind. Now, the question is that now the pramana is there during Shravana. And what is the prameya, the vastu to be known? That is the Atma. The Atma is also very much here because I am here. The real I that I want to know, that is also here. The pramana is here. According to the first knowledge principle that we discussed, when an appropriate and adequate pramana comes in contact with the prameya, then knowledge must take place. And as we discussed, I don't have any will in the matter. That's the second knowledge principle, that the knowledge takes place and it cannot be willed to be any different. So as Pujya Swamiji says, our nose proves this principle all the time. Because our nose picks up smells around us without my willing. And it picks up smells in spite of my willing also. In spite of my willing otherwise, it still picks up the smell of the garbage. That is the nature of knowledge. That is the nature of how pramanas work. Therefore, what do I do if I don't like the smell? I create an obstruction. What happens when I create an obstruction? The pramana cannot operate adequately. The operation of the pramana is stopped by this obstruction. So the fact that obstructions can be there and obstruct the pramana also has to be understood. So similarly, that is the reason why in the presence of a cataract also I cannot see things properly. The cataract then acts like an obstruction. So now, even in this Vedanta Pramana operation, there can be obstacles. And what are those obstacles? They are the malaha and vikshepaha that we have seen before. Malaha is in the form of papam that causes nishiddha karmas to happen. The pursuit of nishiddha karmas. And similarly, this vikshepaha. Vikshepaha causes preoccupation of the mind. So malaha results in this nishiddha karmas and also this attraction to the world, the sensory objects, etc. And vikshepaha is responsible for the preoccupation of the mind. So we can take the example of a pond where there is some dirt. So when there is dirt in the pond, and then there are ripples on the surface of the pond, there are these ripples. And we cannot see the bottom of the pond clearly. But then we can imagine that the dirt is somehow cleared away. The ripples on the pond also become very less. And the bottom of the pond becomes very visible. Similarly, the malaha and vikshepaha, they create these turbulences in the mind. Because of the turbulent mind, the pramana cannot work. Therefore, this reduction of the malaha and vikshepaha is important. This ignorance, the removal of ignorance is like doing a surgery. Like the medical people use this term called ectomy, ECTOMY. So tonsillectomy means is removal of the tonsils through a surgical procedure. Or this appendectomy. is removal of this appendix through this surgical procedure. Now, for a person who has high BP and sugar, the doctor will say, come back, reduce your BP and sugar, and then I can do this tonsillectomy or this appendectomy for you. So similarly, we have to do this ignorancectomy, which is the removal of the ignorance. And if the mala and vikshepa parameters are high, then this surgery is not possible. So the doctor, the guru will say, now you have to control these parameters, control them, gain the qualifications, and then come back. So through karma yoga and upasana yoga, these qualifications are to be gained. And what happens with karma yoga and upasana yoga? Malaha and vikshepa are coming down. And when these malaha and vikshepa come down, that manifests as an improvement in the qualifications, these fourfold qualifications. So we look at why these fourfold qualifications. And Vedanta can be looked at as there are four parts involved there. One is that one has to have an understanding that there is the imperishable and there is also the perishable. That everything in this world is perishable other than the imperishable vastu. Therefore, there has to be this discrimination of the imperishable versus the perishable. This idea, this separation, this idea has to be there. So this is the discrimination that starts with a D. And then we say that once one has recognized that something is imperishable, then one has to develop a certain dispassion for it. And one should stop the clinging to it. And that is where this dispassion comes in. So first step is recognizing that there is imperishable and perishable. The second is developing a distance from the perishable, developing a dispassion instead of a passion, being dispassionate about the perishable. This is the second part. Then the third is certain disciplines are required in this pursuit. Disciplines are required in any field. If you take an athlete, if he has to do well in the field, there have to be certain disciplines. If a musician has to do well in his field, there have to be certain disciplines. Similarly, if one has to make progress in Vedanta also, there have to be certain disciplines. That is the third factor. Disciplines starts with a D again. And then the fourth one is that once one has this dispassion for the perishable, one has to develop a desire for the imperishable. So this is the desire for the imperishable. Again, starts with a D. So Swamiji calls these the four Ds. The discrimination, dispassion, discipline, and desire. And this is basically what Viveka, Vairagyam, Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ, and Mumukṣutvam are basically at a very high level. This is what it is. Now, people often ask this question about how do I practice Vedanta? So the Vedanta practice is all about gaining these qualifications. Practice is all about gaining these qualifications. That's when Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga comes in. So practice is all about Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga, where some doing, action is involved, because practice implies action. And once one has gained these qualifications, then it is Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam that are not as much about practice, but about knowing something. Once the pramana, once the obstacle has been removed, it is all about knowing the tattva. And knowing the tattva itself liberates. There's nothing to do after one has known the Tattva. Let us come to the first qualification. I will read that and you can repeat after me. Nitya nitya vastu vivekaha kaha. I will say this again
Nitya
because I broke the broke it the visarga completely. So there are two ways of chanting it. This is I will demonstrate both the ways and then we will go with the second one. Nitya nitya vastu vivekah kaha. This is the preferred one actually. This is the second one. The way I chanted it earlier was Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha Kaha. So that where the two words were totally separated. If you were to join it, it becomes Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekah Kaha.
Nitya Nityavastu Vivekah Kaha.
Nitya Vastvekam Brahma.
Nityavastekam Brahma.
Tadvyatiriktam Sarvamanityam.
Tatvayatikriktam Sarvamanityam.
Ayameva Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha.
Ayameva Nitya Nityavastu Vivekah.
This is Vivekaha. And Vivekaha is the ability to separate one thing from another when they are mixed up. We had seen this example of the diamond merchant who has a mixture of fake diamonds and real diamonds, and he picks one of these and he's able to look at it carefully and say that this is a real diamond, this is a fake diamond, and so on. When he looks at it with a critical eye, there is some particular test this person has in the mind. So this Viveka is very important. And what is this Viveka here? What are the two things we are talking about? It is Nitya Vastu versus Anitya Vastu. And understanding that everything in this world, right from the smallest microbe to the largest galaxy, everything is Anitya. Everything is born, it is there for some time, and after that it is gone. Every person, every object, every situation, every relationship is Anitya. Therefore, naturally, I should not lean on something that is Anitya for my peace, security, and happiness. I should find something which is stable. And there is also an understanding that every Anitya must have some Nitya Adhishthanam. That is what Vedanta calls Brahman. I still don't know what it is. But then it is there. And therefore, I should try to find out what it is and lean on that for my peace, security, and happiness. So we took the example of taking a stool to a bus ride. So if I'm taking a stool to a bus and sitting on the stool, when these bus drivers, they drive so in such a rash manner, and the driver takes a left turn, I can bang my head on the right because the stool is unstable. The stool itself is going to get thrown all around as the bus makes turns. Whereas if I hold on to something that is firmly attached to the bus, then that is the wiser thing to do. Similarly in this world also. And therefore, I have to be able to recognize what is the Anitya Vastu. I have to be able to recognize the Anitya as Anitya and then not cling to it. The diamond merchant should be able to say that this is a fake diamond and set that aside. Even if you can't at this point tell what is the real diamond, at least you can try to tell what are the fake diamonds. So then there's this other example that Swamiji often gives, which is that sometimes in this some dishes we see in the upama or some of these dishes we see sometimes that beans are chopped. and green chilies are chopped. And they both look very similar. And I can't tell the difference. I don't even know that green chilies are there to begin with in that size. So I eat some of those and then I ask for water. So if I cannot differentiate between Nitya and Anitya, Swamiji says, if you can't differentiate, that is like not being able to differentiate between these beans and green chilies, that will land you in samsara. Because one will have all this burning sensation and then tears coming from the eyes. So that is the samsara that is caused by the aviveka of green chili and beans. Similarly, if I have aviveka, opposite of viveka, if I can't tell between the nitya vastu and anitya vastu, then I'll get hammered by samsara. In fact, Bhagavad Shankaracharya uses this term, hammered by samsara. In fact, Bhagavad says that even after one is hammered by samsara, one is not waking up from this slumber of ignorance. So, discerning that I have this problem of samsara, I'm going through samsara, people don't even discern that. They don't have the maturity to discern that I am undergoing this problem of samsara, meaning this struggle is a never-ending struggle. So to discern this also requires some viveka. Otherwise, one will continue to do whatever one is doing, get hammered. Okay, do the same thing, get hammered again. So one has to see that my entire life, the beginning I was apurnaha, and after all these struggles and getting hammered, I'm still apurna. This is like that decorating a broomstick. A broomstick being decorated with ornaments, the broomstick remains a broomstick. So no matter what I accomplish in artha, kama, dharma, I remain apurnaha because none of those accomplishments are able to remove my apurnatvam because it's a superimposition. It's a product of ignorance. As long as the ignorance is there, the apurnatvam will continue. So discerning this is Viveka. So only if this problem is discerned, then I will want to be free of this problem. So I have to understand that this apurnatvam will continue perpetually unless I do something about it. And doing the same thing is not going to remove the apurnatvam. Relying on this anitya vastu as I have been doing is not going to help remove this apurnatvam. It will only perpetuate my samsara. This is the viveka. Then we come to the next one. I will read that, which is Vairagyam. Viragah kaha
विरागः कः
iha swarga bhogeshu ichharahityam.
इह स्वर्गभोगेषु इच्छाराहित्यम्.
So once one has recognized that the vastu is anitya, it is incapable of solving my fundamental problem, which is freedom from samsara, freedom from apurnatvam, then having a dispassion, a lack of longing for it, a lack of clinging to it, a lack of emotional dependence upon it is Vairagya. Iha swarga bhogeshu ichharahityam. So for all these anitya vastus, not making them a priority in my life, not architecting my life around the accumulation or around the pursuit of anitya vastus. They are no longer a priority for one who has recognized the anitya as the anitya. They are not the primary goal of life anymore. This is Vairagyam. Ichharahityam. I mean, an absence of this desire for these things. An absence of longing, clinging to these things. And not just these things that are in front of me here, Iha Bhoga, not just for Iha Bhoga, even for Swarga Bhoga. Because Vedanta says that Swarga, going to Swarga, is just like taking a scenic route, but you're still on the route, in the route of samsara only. It's just going on a scenic route and enjoy something for some time, but that enjoyment will also end. Kshine punye matya lokam vishanti. Tetam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam kshine punye matya lokam vishanti. This is some punya, an accumulation of punya that takes one to swargaloka. But when one lives in swargaloka, as Swamiji says, there is no permanent residence in swargaloka. One cannot get a green card and reside there. When the punyam is exhausted, then one is this Ardha Chandra Nyaya, it is said that there's like this moon in the shape of a crescent. There, the Swargaloka people who are everybody in Swargaloka is there temporarily, but some people have the job of evicting those whose stay is finished. So they will catch you by the neck and then push one out of Swargaloka. So once one stay in Swargaloka is done, Matya Lokam Vishanti, one comes back. And one has to come and live amidst the mosquitoes or amidst in the presence nearby Kuvam or in other similar areas. And then the struggle continues. So this is understanding that Swarga Bhogeshu also Ichharahityam. And then this Vairagya, there's another dimension to it, which is this objectivity. I superimpose subjective values on many things. That money can give me security. And money inherently doesn't have any security. Because when one is stashing money somewhere in the house, it can be eaten by termites or bitten by rats. So to avoid that, one keeps money in the bank, which pays some puny rate of interest. But then it is eaten by inflation. Or one says that I want better returns, one keeps it in the stock market. And all you need is some conflict to erupt somewhere. And the stock market can also crash. Money doesn't have inherent security, and if one is trying to derive security from money, then that is also a mistake. It is leaning on an anitya vastu. Similarly, objects can give me happiness. Another subjective value that I am superimposing on objects. If objects inherently had something called happiness, then the same object should uniformly give happiness to everybody. But that is not the case. And the same object doesn't even give uniformly happiness to the same person also. Because there is boredom that sets in after a while. The object inherently doesn't have anything called happiness. That's a subjective value I am superimposing, and that too is because of a mistake. Happiness really comes from the subject only. The nature of the Atma is Ananda. We will see this. But by mistake, I am thinking that when in the quiet state of mind that is achieved, when I acquire an object, there is a quiet state of mind that is achieved at that point in which my own Atmananda gets reflected, and then I mistakenly attribute it to the object. It is much like this dog that chews on a bone. When the dog chews on the bone actually creates small injuries in the mouth of the dog that leads to some bleeding. The dog sucks that blood, thinking it's coming from the bone. The blood belongs to the dog. The dog doesn't realize it. It attributes that good taste that it sees to the bone. A human being is making the same mistake. This not having all these subjective values, looking at an object for what it is worth, without any subjective values imposed on it, this is Vairagya. He also said that it is the absence of these binding ragas and dveshas. Because if I have binding ragas and dveshas, then I'm thinking that I cannot live without a certain person, I cannot live without a certain object, I cannot live without a certain situation. If I have these kind of ideas in my mind, then they will invariably result in disturbances. An object for which I have a binding raga creates anxiety, creates disturbance in the mind by its absence. And similarly, an object or a person for whom I have a binding dvesha, such a person or object can create disturbances by their presence. Therefore, for a Vedanta student, it's important to convert all these binding ragas and dveshas into preferences. One can certainly have preferences that I prefer a certain object, a certain person, a certain situation to be this way. But then, if prarabdha warrants it otherwise, so I'm accepting it. Ishvara's prasad. This is the absence of binding ragas and dveshas. And finally, a mindset where one is willing, one is ready to lose all that which is losable. This is Vairagya. What is losable? Everything is losable. Everything is anitya. One day, that thing, the person, the object, the situation, one day it'll leave me because it's anitya. If it so happens that if it doesn't leave, then I have to leave one day. So the dissociation is certain to happen. And when this such is the case, then it is a wise thing to not rely on these anitya vastus, because they are all losable. So this is Vairagya. Then we come to the Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ. And I will read this part, and we will read all of those together. That is, all the 6 qualifications. We will not break them up. We will read them together, and then we'll get into each of them. Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ ka.
Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ ka.
Śamodama uparamastitiksha śraddha samadhanam cheti.
Śamodama uparamastitiksha śraddha samadhanam cheti.
Śamah kaha.
Śamah kaha.
Mano nigraha.
Mano nigraha.
Damah kaha.
Damah kaha.
Chakshuradi bahyendriya nigraha.
Chakshuradibahyendra nigraha.
Uparamah kaha.
Uparamah kaha.
Swadharmanushtanameva.
Swadharmanushtanameva.
Titiksha ka.
Titiksha ka.
Shitoshna sukha dukkhadi sahishnutvam.
Shitoshna sukha dukkhadi sahishnutvam.
Shraddha kidrishi.
Shraddha कीदृशी
Guru Vedanta Vakyadishu Vishwasa Shraddha
Guru Vedanta Vakyadishu Vishwasah Shraddha
Samadhanam Kim
Samadhanam Kim
Chittaikagrata
Chittaikagrata
Mumukṣutvam Kim
Mumukṣutvam Kim
Moksho me bhuyaditi ichha
Moksho me bhuyat iti ichcha
etat sadhana chatushtayam
Yetat sadhana chatuштayam
tatah tattva vivekasyadhikarino bhavanti
Tatah tattva vivekasyadhikarino bhavanti
Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ ka. The Shishya is asking, what is this second qualification? There it was called Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ. Here the same thing is called Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ. So the teacher enumerates these as Shamaha, Damaha, Uparamaha, Titiksha, Shraddha, and Samadhanam. The sixfold inner wealth. So then we go one by one. Shamah kaha. What is this shamaha? The Shishya asks. Guru says, Mano nigrahaha. Nigrahaha is this discipline, management, or restraint. Discipline, management, or restraint of what? Manas, the manaha. That's why Mano nigrahaha. Manasaha nigrahaha, Mano nigrahaha. So this capacity, as we said, that the mind has got is three kinds of thoughts. At a high level, you can say two kinds of thoughts, the voluntary thoughts and involuntary thoughts. The involuntary thoughts themselves are of two kinds, world generated or vasana generated. Vasana means generated by our own past impressions. Now, when I want to put my mind to work on a certain task, then I need the ability for the mind to focus on my voluntary thoughts. So I need to be able to ask the involuntary thoughts to vacate the mind. This ability is shamaha. When the mind is available for doing what I want to do. As we saw that if I have been out of town for a long time and if I had rented the apartment out to my apartment out to a tenant and now I intend to come back to the town, I should be able to ask the tenant to vacate the apartment. If the tenant refuses to vacate the apartment, then that apartment is not available for my use. The same is the case with the mind. If it gets occupied by the involuntary thoughts, then the mind is not available for doing what I want to do. We had also seen this example of a spyware or a malware running on a laptop. So with my laptop, sometimes I find that when we move the mouse or when we are trying to type something, the laptop does not respond at all. Why? Because the laptop has been taken over by spyware or malware which is running in the background and it's eating up the CPU completely. And then the laptop is not available to do other things. Similarly, if these involuntary thoughts have taken over the mind is not available for doing what I want to do. So shamaha is the ability to ask the involuntary thoughts to vacate and then be able to use the mind for my voluntary thinking. Then the next one is damaha. Damahkaha. Chakshuradi bahyendriya nigraha. Again, nigraha, restraint, management, and discipline. Of what? Chakshuradi bahyendriya. This discipline, management, or restraint of my sense organs. Why is this important? Because if there is an unrestrained contact of the sense organs with different parts of the world, then that can result in world-generated involuntary thoughts. World enters the mind through the sense organs, and sometimes the world enters, and then the involuntary thoughts get generated, and they refuse to vacate. And once these involuntary thoughts come in through the senses, contacting the world, and these involuntary thoughts vacating, don't vacate, that's a problem. Therefore, understanding that certain parts of the world can be addictive, certain parts of the world can be provocative, certain parts of the world can be disturbing, and avoiding contact of the senses with those parts of the world is basically damaha. This is the restraint and discipline of the senses. We will go to the next one. Uparamah kaha swadharmanushtanameva. So what is uparamaha? Swadharmanushtanameva. So uparamaha literally means withdrawal. Withdrawal. So here the author is saying swadharmanushtanameva, performance of one's duties. How are these two connected? How is the literal meaning connected to the meaning the author is giving here? As we have discussed, we have our ragas and dveshas. These ragas and dveshas, they can try, they can clamor. Sometimes they clamor saying, do this, where one has a raga for something. But then one has to use dharma viveka, and say that even though my raga is asking me to do this, I will not do it because it is adharma. And similarly, sometimes my dvesha may come in and say, hey, whatever you're trying to do, right, this seems like a lot of hard work. It seems like you have to do some exertion. Physical exertion is there. Some amount of discipline is required. You have to get up early, do this, do that. Why engage in all this? The raga may the dvesha may try to come in. But then I have to say that this is dharma. This is something I have to do. So one does what needs to be done in spite of the clamoring of the ragas and dveshas. And one doesn't do what should not be done in spite of the ragas and dveshas trying to make one do otherwise. So in this, one is withdrawing from one's own ragas and dveshas. And this is the uparama the author is talking about. Swadharma anushtanam. The more popular meaning that comes in the other Vedantic texts also we had seen in this context is from the Viveka Chudamani also we had taken a phrase, Bahya analambanam vrittehe esha uparatihi uttama. So the non-extroversion of the mind not being extroverted is uparamaha. Also called uparatihi. Both are synonymous. So with shamaha and damaha, one can have a certain quietude of the mind with shamaha and damaha. But then maintaining that quietude of the mind is uparamaha. But there can be a fascination for the worldly objects. There can be a fascination still lingering in the mind. So that means one has not yet grown out of it. This growing out of this fascination is uparamaha. As a child, as we had seen, that if somebody waves a candy in front of the child has this fascination for it. The child goes after it. But then when the same candy is waved before a 25-year-old, one would assume that he is not behaving like the child anymore and not running after this person who is holding the candy. So that person has grown out of this fascination for the candy. So similarly, this growing out of is required. And that is this uparama. So shamaha and damaha imply a certain restraint. But in uparamaha, there is a certain, it becomes more natural. This restraint is not required anymore. Even if the sense object or the worldly object, whatever it is in front of me, this person doesn't have that urge to go after it anymore. So, one of the keys to this is to cultivate an interest in something more beautiful, something that is subtler, something that is superior. And once one cultivates such an interest, the mind naturally tends to dwell upon that. And that is the key for this Uparamaha. Then we come to the next of the Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ. Titikṣāka Shītoṣna Sukhadukkhādi Sahishnutvam. This is Titiksha. Shītoṣna Sukhadukkhādi Sahishnutvam. Life is all about these pairs of opposites. Heat and cold. Shita Ushna. Sukha Dukkha, pleasure and pain. Labha, labha, there can be profit and loss. Jaya, jaya, victory and defeat. Or there can be praise and censure. So in all of this, there are pairs of opposites. So being able to handle this without complaint, without lamenting, without fussing about it, going through these pairs of opposites, that is titiksha. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam. Chinta vilaparahitam sa titiksha nigadyate. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam, going through a certain difficulty. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam. Meaning for every small difficulty, not trying to seek a remedy for it. Because some pinpricks of life will keep coming. And if one is trying to seek remedy for every little thing, then a lot of time and energy will be wasted in just seeking remedies. One has to strengthen oneself to such an extent that one can just tide over the pinpricks of life without having to seek remedy. Apratikara purvakam chinta vilaparahitam, without this worry, without this stress, without lamenting, without complaining about it. And why is this important? Well, it is important to conserve one's mental energy and channelize it into Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. And if one is seeking remedies or complaining, fussing about it, then the mind is diverted to other things, basically. That's why Titiksha becomes an important qualification. Then Shraddha ki drishi. Guru Vedanta Vakyadishu Vishwasaha Shraddha. Shraddha is giving a benefit of doubt to the words of Vedanta, to the words of the Guru. So sometimes, as we said, we have all these numerous conclusions with regards to Jivaha, Jagat, and Ishvara. We carry numerous conclusions. Why? Because of the Ajnanam, there is Adhyasa. These conclusions are nothing but an Adhyasa, a product of ignorance. And therefore, when Vedanta, the Guru says something different, then there is a mental resistance in the form of doubt. When there is a doubt, instead of questioning the Guru or Vedanta, saying what you are saying doesn't make sense at all, and walk away. Instead of doing that, one has to question one's own understanding. You say Vedanta is saying this, Guru is saying this, so it must be true. And if that is the case, where is the shortcoming in my own understanding? One has to direct the inquiry to oneself. Where am I making a mistake? Why am I not able to understand this? And that is the direction in which, if one continues in that direction, that is when breakthroughs in understanding will be achieved. Because one will break one's own past understanding and one will see through one's own past understanding. That is the breakthrough in understanding. And such breakthroughs in understanding are possible only if one says that what Vedanta is saying must be true. There's something wrong with the way I am looking at it. And then we had seen the other definition of Shraddha also, Upajivya Pramana Swata Pramanya Jnanam Shraddha. One has to take Vedanta to be a Pramana. One has to approach Vedanta as a Pramana. As we had seen in the third knowledge principle, every pramana has got inherent self-validity, reliability, and trustworthiness in its own sphere of operation. So every pramana has got the spheres of operation. The eyes have got the sphere of operation, which is the field of colors. The ears have the sphere of operation, which is the field of sounds. So in the field of colors, the eye has undisputed validity, reliability, and trustworthiness. Because what the eyes are revealing, it cannot be confirmed or contradicted by any other pramana. I cannot confirm through my ears as to whether the color of something in front of me is red or not. Because the redness is revealed by the eyes. And if I am looking for this confirmation, I will never get this confirmation from any other source because no other source operates in the same sphere of knowledge. And if I am saying that any other source doesn't have inherent self-validity also, then I will doubt the other source also. Firstly, no other source operates in the same sphere, and if somehow I get some knowledge from that other source, then also I will doubt that knowledge. Because how are you so sure that that knowledge is the right knowledge? Therefore, we say that the only way to gain a certain conviction in knowledge is to understand that pramanas are inherently self-valid. That is when finality in knowledge is possible at all. Otherwise, there can be no finality in knowledge. And therefore, every pramana has to prove itself as a valid source of knowledge. The eyes have to prove themselves. Nothing else can prove the eyes. And the eyes prove themselves as valid sources of knowledge. That is why we use them all the time. I get fruitful knowledge of colors from my eyes. I get fruitful knowledge of forms from my eyes. I know they are fruitful because I am able to conduct vyavahara through it. Therefore, the eyes prove themselves as fruitful means of knowledge. Similarly, I have to let Vedanta prove itself as a fruitful means of knowledge. I have to remove all the obstacles in the form of doubts or all the obstacles like we discussed, malaha and vikshepaha. All I can do is remove the obstacles and then employ the pramana, that is Vedanta, the Shabda pramana. We say that if there are no obstacles, then knowledge will rise. And then one will see that the knowledge is fruitful because one sees that moksha is my own nature. One has to let Vedanta prove itself. Nothing else can prove Vedanta. Just as the eyes stand tall in the sphere of knowledge of colors, Vedanta stands tall in the sphere of Atma Jnanam. This attitude of approaching Vedanta as a pramana is Shraddha. And then the last of the sixfold qualifications, Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ, is samadhanam. Samadhanam kim chittaikagrata. This is one-pointedness of the mind. As we said, the samadhanam is twofold. There is long-term single-pointedness of the mind and short-term single-pointedness of the mind. Just as I'm going on a long journey, if I'm going on a long journey, the destination has to be in my mind constantly. I cannot have multiple destinations in my mind because I will not know what route to follow. So I have to be clear about what my destination is. That has to be the main destination. On the way, there can be stops, but even if I stop, I should know I have to resume my journey. And if I take any turn, I have to make sure the turns are somehow leading to my destination. Otherwise, I should not take that turn. Similarly, I have to be clear that Mokṣa is the destination of my life. Therefore, everything that I do has to be somehow connected to my final destination. If something is going to lead me astray, I avoid that. This is a long-term samadhanam. Just like I have a compass, the compass always points to the north. Similarly, in my mind, there should always be this compass that points towards moksha. It should be in the back of my mind. This is the samadhanam that Tattva Bodha is talking about. And then, even in the short term, I should be able to, with shamaha and damaha, gain a certain quietude of the mind, with uparamaha, maintain it. Now I have this quietude of the mind that is maintained. That quiet mind should be directed towards shravanam, mananam, and nididhyasanam. And that focusing of the mind on the task at hand, that is samadhanam. And all of this, all of us have this ability for this focusing of the mind. As we have seen in the thriller, when we are watching a thriller or the last over of a cricket match in which 6 runs are required or the last ball, whatever be the situation, that mind we are closely engaged with that, with whatever we are, with the television at that point, whatever it is showing me, every little detail I'm following. Why? Because I'm interested in. So similarly, one develops an interest in this Vedanta, one develops an interest for moksha, then all of this is possible. That samadhanam will happen naturally at that point. There is no exertion required. So this finishes the discussion of the Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ. And then is the last of the 4 qualifications, Mumukṣutvam kim. Moksho me bhuyad iti ichcha. Let this freedom be mine. Let this moksha be mine. Such an ichcha, this is the desire, the 4th D. So freedom from what? We said freedom from this perpetual struggle called samsara, freedom from this perpetual sense of apurnatvam, which I cannot live with. I cannot live with my apurnatvam. Every time I see myself as apurna, I have to do something to fix it. And this is what I've been trying to do all my life unsuccessfully. I want this freedom from this apurnatvam once and for all. And that seeking of the freedom is moksha. Seeking this nitya vastu. And as we saw, this Mumukṣutvam, this seeking for the freedom, has to be channelized into jignasutvam. One has to diagnose the root cause of all of my struggle, all of my apurnatvam to be ajnana. And only then the mumukshuhu becomes a jignasuhu, and the jignasuhu has to then come to the right pramana, which is Vedanta, and become a shushrushuhu. So the mumukshuhu has to become a jignasuhu, who becomes a shushrushuhu. a seeker of the Shravanam of Vedanta. And once one has this Mumukṣutvam, then one will also try to do what is required in order to gain the other qualifications. If there are other qualifications lacking, then one will try to do whatever is required to gain those qualifications. So this is a conclusion of the Śamādiṣaṭkasampattiḥ and the sadhana chatushtaya sampattiḥ. So then the author says, Tataha Tattva Vivekasyadhikarino bhavanti. Once one has gained these qualifications, one becomes an adhikari for Tattva Vivekaha, for getting into this discriminative inquiry into the nature of reality. Tattva. One becomes an adhikari. So for such a person, the Shravanam, the Pramana that is operated during Shravanam, and such a person who has the qualification, it will result in this Atma-Jnanam. So this qualification itself is a spectrum. There can be a Manda Adhikari, a Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. So one may have these qualifications in a smaller measure, one may have the qualifications in a medium measure, and one may have the qualifications in a higher measure. So the benefit that one gains from the Shravanam is proportional to the qualifications. And we say that the Shravanam itself also helps improve the qualifications also. So as one does the Shravanam, as one understands more and more clearly what Vedanta is teaching me, in what direction Vedanta wants me to move, and all of this becomes clearer and clearer, then one's motivation and commitment for the pursuit also goes up. And naturally, one will also try to then fill the gaps and try to acquire the qualifications that are necessary. So with this, I'll conclude our discussion today. And in the next class, we will enter the Sutra Vakyam, the second subtopic in Tattva Bodha. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Any comments or questions? Shall we conclude then? Hari.
Hari Om.
Hari.
Thank you, sir.
Hari.
Hari Om.
Hari.
Hari Om.
Hari.